Hey, looks like we've got a pretty good crew today. Well, let's kick off things. Welcome. I hope everybody's doing well. It seems like, it's unsettling. I was talking to my assistant, Karen, and she said in Gunnison, Colorado, they just announced 19 new cases yesterday. So kind of crazy times, man. Just seems kind of unsettling. So, but I hope everybody's safe and good and cruising along. I thought today what we do is we got kind of all the stuff put together from the sprint, and thought what we do is kind of go through all that stuff. What I wanted to do is walk through what we did in the sprint, and then actually I want to introduce the kind of the manifesto draft where we are on it, and let everybody kind of take a look at it. I'll make sure I send copies out to everybody too. And then we've been working on working group priorities, and Balaji's going to walk us through those, and so everybody can kind of think about that and how they want to participate. So well, let's get going. Hey, Brandon, should we just go? Let's start off with one of our great breakouts.
Sounds good. I'm going to admit a few more people here that are late. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Hey, guys. So I thought today I would just start walking us through the deck. Anybody that participated, be sure to jump in, and you can add color commentary or anything that you'd like. And then when we get to the design principles, we have a bunch of design principles in the manifesto that still needs a lot of tweaking. So we're going to create some kind of mechanism after the call to have you guys vote on what you think are top priorities, and then we'll also talk about the work streams. But before that, hey Jen, just give us a quick update on what's happening at HBS and the lab.
Hey everybody, good to see you. Sorry I haven't been around the last couple of weeks, but good to be joining a lot of old faces, new faces. Always good to be on the Open Assembly weekly meeting. So it's been good. Yeah, a lot of really cool things. I'm working on a project here at the lab. Just taking a look at sort of what transpired out the gate in terms of after the WHO declared, COVID a worldwide, pandemic, and then just seeing what sort of activities, and we filtered it down to some loose collaborations, some things that people do in terms of, hackathons and things of that nature. And then, more easily, again, tracking kind of more contest activities. So we're working on a few things, got to interview people who are actually going to be participating on some ventilator development challenges. And it's really interesting. You saw a lot of, and we're trying to coin this phrase, so don't spread it yet, but I want to kind of throw it out there. And what we're seeing is like end start innovation, which is starting the innovative process with the end in mind. So a lot of the challenge organizers, including, DOE and some other ones like Montreal Hospital and so forth, they had it in mind that in order to kind of launch these contests successfully, they had the end in mind, and that included regulation, so how to get past regulation and commercialization of products, and lots and lots of participation around that stuff, and really with deployment as well. So thinking through, how would this work if we were trying to get, ventilators spun up in Africa and so forth, in more remote places. Can we make it affordable? Can we make it accessible? Can people, come up with designs where you can go to fab labs and do it, and all these shipping costs and maintenance costs would be minimized? So they bake those things into these challenge statements, which I thought was an interesting way of doing it. I think times, when you're designing a challenge or designing some of these group exercises, it's very exploratory, right? And we've become accustomed to using it in that way, but with these specific things in mind, and because sort of our premise was, well, our challenge is different in the time of crises, can we get more out of these and so forth. And in some of our research as well, we saw some challenges come up during World War II and things of that nature, where there's crisis around the world, but nothing, you know, in global in the sense that there's a lot of people wanting to contribute. So some of the interesting things, again, just with the end in mind, shaping and so that, you know, it's very clear, and even then there's some shepherding process that needs to happen as people go. And some of the feedback was, well, the initial stage was great, and then the second and third were a little more difficult, and you needed some help in terms of experts and things of that nature. But the way people self-organize and collaborate is great. We talked to one team, and they put together a team of like initially 27, and then it grew to like 55, right, over a span of a few days. And the overwhelming consensus was they all just wanted to contribute in some way, and didn't mind being organized in a way, didn't mind splitting tasks, didn't mind contributing their own time, because there's all this intellectual capital and there's all this desire to contribute, this sort of passion. And they were able to successfully submit and meet all the requirements, and got awarded to go forward. So I thought it was really interesting in thinking about those things, where in these things, and it's not, you know, dissimilar to what we're doing here. We're trying to grow a community, but in specified objectives, you know, how people can come together and willing to lend a hand. And I've always sort of had this motto of like, you know, some people want to contribute, but they don't want to complete, and that's okay. And I think this is what, you know, innovation's about, is the ability to bring things together and really think past the mile markers and see what the contribution can be, if it's a lot or a little. So it's some really cool learnings, and got that feedback from multiple people who participated, and I thought that was sort of enlightening on our end. And then just one other tidbit that I'm seeing, and this will be interesting to see the trends as it goes, but a lot of feedback that we're getting from sponsors of challenges is that, you know, oftentimes you get this initial like really neat idea, a really neat prototype, and then it sort of stalls. It's because it either gets taken off market and people do startups and things of that nature, or a big company comes in and just swoops it up, the idea. But there needs to be some flexibility in keeping the innovation process going and injecting resources and funds kind of in the middle. So I'm not talking about like the 30K, 100K, but just sort of right when it's starting to get good, and instead of it just disappearing, which is what we see a lot in the open space, keeping that momentum going by having either sponsors continually funded or you know, different government grants and so forth that can keep the momentum going. So I sense that that's an issue, particularly those of you guys who run, you know, challenges and contests, or those of you guys who have platforms that field these things. And I do think there's something to crack there long term, because I think that's what's going to help us, again, think through what are good ideas, what are bad ideas, how can these things get operational, how can we test them, and work more collaboratively, faster as a group. And that sort of middle stage there is where innovation is getting really lost. So we're observing those things. Again, we're doing all this in the context of a paper, but I thought I'd share a tidbit with you guys on that stuff. And then one last thing, I'm sorry, John, I'm going a little long, but just haven't been on. Kareem and I started working with some folks on a AI expert network, and you don't have to be an expert in AI, but just thinking through some different things that might happen as we get engaged more at the lab with startups, and what sort of role perhaps some of you guys can play in advising them, and interesting things that might come up as we have MBA students here at HBS develop different things. And so we're trying to sketch out some things around that. So maybe in contact with some of you have ideas on sort of, you know, how do I get engaged, sort of thing. It's still very organic, it's first stages, but you know, we have some things have been pretty cool, getting a lot of good feedback on our AI in the Enterprise network. And so we're going to, again, continually do more things in the entrepreneurial space that we've been doing the last few years, but sketching it more programmatically as opposed to it just being courses that we offer. So that's it on my end, John. Again, and John and I had a really good discussion the other day about a range of things, which we always do. I always appreciate my time with John. So John's doing good stuff here, and so he always has our full support. So feel free to beat him up and ask him all sorts of questions that he needs to figure out to keep us moving.
Thanks, Jen. That was awesome. Yeah, anybody who wants to be involved in anything that's happening at the list, just make sure you connect with Jen. Lots of cool stuff, and the lab always loves. That's what I love about Jen and Kareem. They're always looking for input from everybody. So that's awesome. Hey, let's jump. I've got a little presentation created. So for those of you that were on the design sprint, please feel free to interrupt anything I miss or haven't captured. And then likewise for those people that weren't there, be sure to pop questions. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see if I can do that. Hey Brandon, it looks like the host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Okay.
Little green button, you just go over there and switch it out.
As a host.
How's that?
Let's see. Oh yeah, perfect. Let's see. I'm going to do this one right here. Okay, here we go. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, people to share with. All right, here we go. So today's agenda, I want to do a little recap and then next steps. I think the next steps we all agreed on was finalize the manifesto, which I'll kind of go over with you guys today. And we're working on designing the organizational structure. Just an update on that. I've got some meetings with some lawyers who the preeminent nonprofit trade association lawyers. They're Brian Cave is their name. They're global, but the guys that I'm working with are out of St. Louis and Kansas City. And then develop working groups. So Balaji volunteered to lead that charge, and he's going to talk about that at the end of the session. So here we go. Hey, I really want to thank Douglas Ferguson from Voltage Control. So really amazing process he set up, and I think we connected through Steve Rader. So Steve, thanks so much for making that happen. It was really great. It's hard to wrangle so many great thinkers from across the globe, and Douglas did an amazing job. So just as a reminder, here were the participants. Everybody did a great job, and really grateful for all the time and effort, especially for folks like David and Saji for spending so much time from Europe. It's so late at night, and Simon as well. So thanks guys, especially for all that hard work, and everybody. So it happened last week, and the idea was on Monday we were going to, popped up. Let's see, we were going to map the problem space. Tuesday we sketched the big ideas to talk about risks, and then we decided kind of on a solution and made commitments. So let's just kind of go through what we did, and then we'll get into the meat of it. So on Monday, we just really thought about the goals and the start at the end. So we started by imagining, I'm getting some feedback. We started by imagining our end result and risks along the way, and then work backwards. And the goal we started with was we're uncovering better ways to engage global talent by helping others to do it. We seek to reduce the friction that interferes with the adoption of new work paradigms, while we realize talent supply is equally or even more important than demand. We recognize a need to stimulate more demand first to initiate the flywheel of opportunity. Through our work, we have committed to these values, and so we started theirs. And then it was awesome that we had Paul Livko, Jody Miller, Sheila Mahoney, and Kirsten Hammerberg participate in these kind of how might we interviews. They were expert interviews. Really, really great process, and we learned a lot. It was great stimulation for the group to kind of lean in and think more about what could we be creating. Let's see. On day 2 was all about the sketch. So we started sketching things out, kind of did some light demos. I love that quote, great artists lie, good artists lie, great artists steal, Picasso. So it was a really great participatory process, and we got inspired by a lot of different points of view. Did this exercise by 10 by 10 writing. I thought it was a really great exercise. Everybody participated, kind of instead of trying to do a big brainstorm, everybody went away and did some of their own work and then came together and presented it. It seemed like a really effective way to go on day 2.
I love all the thinking faces you've got there.
Yeah, exactly.
The concentration was really intense.
Exactly. Look at biology. Like, where's Waldo? Right.
That's because I was chewing something, so I said, let me do that strategically.
Yeah, exactly. So, so we focused on the solutions. Just the team spent the rest of the day sketching one or two solutions that they felt that were most promising, and that was kind of coming up with this manifesto. So we went away, and then the next morning we're in this decide mode. We had 20 different manifestos that people had created, and we started whittling those down, coming up with kind of what were the best ideas, how would they work, how would it all go together. Really great process again, voting. And we came up with kind of 2, so really thankful for the group. It was a great process, but there were a lot of things that really emerged from it. We also got to a point where we talked about the needs and commitments, some of the needs that we need to have going forward, some of the top priorities, and then the commitments that everybody was going to make from the group. And certainly I can share all this stuff with anybody who wants to have it. And all the raw material I think was shared with the bigger group already. If not, we can do it. So coming out of it, the insights were, man, there was so much alignment already. And while there was nuance, everybody was in agreement, which was amazing to have such a powerful group together to do that. Number 2, consistent desire to focus on demand and removing barriers, but not to the detriment of the supply experience. So we thought that, it's a flywheel, like I talked about earlier, that we can really focus on breaking down the barriers of demand. It helps both the working side and the platform side create more momentum. So number 3, strong desire to get to specific key barriers that need to be addressed and how the group can address them collectively. And number 4, everyone appreciates the work that we do, and I appreciate everybody else's work. So that was great. Thanks. So here are the top priorities. The top priorities we came up with was to release the manifesto into the wild. We've got this manifesto that we're going to talk about today, but certainly have some more work that we can be done on it, and we'll solicit your help to do that. Organize work groups, summarize the outcome of the 3 days, and then secure feedback from everybody on the manifesto. We're working on the operation model. So Diane and I, and then Rich Copsey's been nice enough to want to be involved in that. And anybody else that's interested, let me know. And then create a dream team of list of all who want to be involved and should be involved. So that's those are the top priorities. So let's just jump into the finalizing the manifesto. So this manifesto, we started with 20, got down to 2. We've done some wordsmithing and editing and pushed those 2 together. Balaji and Steve Rader and Diane Finkhausen and John Healy and Sajeev Nair all helped do this. So thank you so much for your participation and helping this. And we also had a copywriter wordsmith some stuff. So here we go. So the vision, the collective, or whatever name we want to come up with that's right, is a global movement to usher in a new era, an era of new work, dedicated to helping organizations, platforms, and workers achieve their full potential by making open talent models mainstream. Okay, and the purpose and the objective: digital technologies have radically changed and continue to change the world we live in. But the way we work remains stubbornly an artifact of the past, stuck firmly in the industrial age. The collective exists to bring into the world a new way of working, a whole new work, one that aligns how we work with the people who can do the work and the work itself. We believe that to mainstream this new work, we must help increase and integrate the adoption of open talent processes by creating a shared narrative around standardization, transparency, information security, metrics, adoption maturity, workers' benefits, and worker sustainability, benefiting everyone, organizations, and workers alike. Okay, and I'll make sure I get this out to everybody so everybody can kind of noodle on it. on their own as well. We all agreed on the audience of being small to medium-sized businesses and large enterprises, C-suite, HR, and procurement, plus the talent community, and obviously plus platforms that are driving the innovation. And defining principles, this is kind of, we've got a lot here to think about. Maybe I'll just let everybody kind of read it on their own. But the idea would be here, what we'll do is in the next couple of days, send all these defining principles out to everybody. I'd love to get it down to a more manageable list, maybe 10, maybe 8. There's some duplicates in here, but I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to be able to think about things and participate. So, but I really like this idea that we have a bunch of "we believe in" statements.
John, one of the things I was
Yes,
thinking about on this, I was looking. I mentioned to you, coincidentally last week was talking to the guy who runs Scrum.org, and he went right back to the start of like where the Agile Manifesto started, and you know, kind of the early principles of all of that. One of the things that that he was saying was, you know, and I think, you know, there's a lot of similarities now to what we're trying to do, right? Is that they started off quite long and quite wordy, and then they became more and more refined as they went. And if you look now, like, they're distilled nicely in lots of different places as 6 simple blocks, right? And that's how they've got shared and kind of picked up over the years. And so I think, you know, we definitely need to distill these things down and try and make them as easy to create some of that kind of memorability and virality of these things as well, so that they don't feel like a massive essay to try and get your head around as you go forward. They're a great start, but I think we have to try and boil them down.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I hope the group can participate in that. I think, you know, one of the ways that we had it designed first, and some of it's wordsmithing, is to have the words that are highlighted actually as the lead words, like self-regulate, clarity, standards, reduction of friction. We just kind of, for this iteration, put them in, you know, "we believe" statements. So I think it's, you know, lots of ways to do it, but I agree with you, Simon, that making it memorable and making it viral, like too many are going to slow us down. And I think, you know, by having too many, it's just going to dilute our effort. I would rather focus on a few to start with, and then be able to evolve those things. And then once we accomplish those, be able to focus on the next few, and, you know, so that, you know, the principles stay the same, but we kind of, what we focus on to bring those principles to life can morph.
Ron,
Yeah.
I love your objectives and principles, but I question concerning the vision.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very one-sided, only from the supplier side. And I wondered whether you thought about creating a vision which is truly beneficial, truly win-win for the supplier and the demand side.
Right. I think that's a good point. I mean, our sense is that, you know, one of the things we've been trying to struggle with this, and one of the things that came out of the conversation was this idea of new work. I think when we use open talent and crowdsourcing and open innovation, or even gig economy, that sometimes, you know, there's so much baggage with those words. So certainly good input there, Jerry, and we'll, you know, take that. And if anybody, you know, I'll make sure I send this document to you, and any kind of notes you can put on would be super helpful. So, great. Any other comments on these 4 portions?
I just assume if there's any comments, you know, I kind of want to absorb the document and then maybe put written feedback back. And if so, like, would I email it to you, or what's the right approach for that? Yeah.
So we'll create an approach after this call and have a document that everybody can lean into, probably a Google Doc that we can all kind of lean into. But I would really appreciate anybody that wants to help on this. Love the feedback. So there was one more part. It was what we hold dear, and the idea was we have a responsibility to create new work structures that allow for more geographical, ethnic, racial, creative, and physical diversity for workers, so that they can follow their passion, solve difficult problems for organizations while growing professionally and being fairly compensated. So I'll make sure that this kind of set of documents, these 5, different parts of the manifesto, goes out to everybody, and everybody makes comments on it and thoughts, and we get that kind of, pushed back down together. Love to get that kind of, tomorrow or over the weekend. Want to make sure we're continuing to create the momentum here and make sure we can push things forward. The next step will be we get these done, and I would like to do is take it a little bit outside our group and start testing it out and beta testing, see how people feel about it before we launch it out to the wild completely. So the next steps on this, we're going to share it, and we'll give you guys a group survey to vote on the design principles, so we can kind of narrow those down. We'll share the manifesto with those kind of outside the industry, non-adopters and non-knowers, and then refine and iterate the feedback. So good. Anybody else have any feedback on this before we kind of move on? Okay, cool. All right, as I mentioned earlier, Diane and I have been working on the designing the organization structure. I want to get some feedback from some technical feedback from Brian Cave. I've got a meeting with them tomorrow, so I'll be able to come back to the group with a little bit more structure and thoughts about how we organize something into where we want to go. Probably we'll have some options, and just want to be able to explore those options with everybody. So we'll have some more next week certainly to talk about. And then developing working groups. Balaji, you want to take it away?
Sure. So think about these as much as working groups or work streams where a bunch of us need to come together, have maybe more disaggregated conversations compared to this group call that we all come to. And then I think we should all pick each of a work stream or a working group based on something that we are passionate about, something that we have a true opinion about, and something that things have been noodling in your mind about. There's a solution for this, but I need across a group of stakeholders that come together to solve this. So we've kind of created a few work streams as of now. Doesn't mean that these are comprehensive. There could be others that will come up, but let me take you through a few of them. I'm not going to talk you through each of them. I think the first one, not in any order of priority, is just credentializing the platforms. For us as large companies, or when I'm talking to other large companies, one of the big questions is, how do we know this company is a good company and that they will safeguard my interests and get the job done? And given that there are new companies coming up all the time, an ability to credentialize, like a Gartner style credentializing, is important. Thinking through a framework on how to do that, which is not just a vendor style approval credentializing like Gartner does. How can we do it as a community? Like people that have used each of these platforms, people that are contributing, saying, okay, I've used a platform and I would put this forth for other communities to use it. So you're bringing in with a community feedback as a starting point versus as well, it could be extremely useful for adoption. Similarly, we want to think through maturity model. How do we scale? How does a structure look like from a supplier side to grow from 10 people in the open talent serving an enterprise to 1,000 people? Other than Kelly, I'm not sure if we have many companies on this call that have 1,000 freelancers at a client. And I think if we have to truly scale, we have to have more of such large accounts for many of these marketplaces for us to truly scale. But right now, the path to that maturity is unclear. So again, anybody who has perspectives, thoughts on that maturity model of how they have been thinking about scaling within their own clients and what they would want to hear from the clients or other marketplaces could be a safe space to talk about. And then similarly, we have an enterprise education certification work stream. Let's go to the next one, and I'm going to pause after that. We want to talk about playbook for enterprises, just like Sajeev, David, we've been on the side where we want to use it. We are really interested in using it, but we don't know how to. So we want to stumble our way along like a blind man, just looking around how to do this. But instead of that, if there's a path, similarly, there's a maturity model for the supplier side. This is almost a maturity model for the enterprise side as to how, if you really want to use this at scale and truly make a difference in agility and cost reduction, whatever your goals are, there should be a playbook. governance is exactly this conversation, bring everybody together, ensure that all voices are heard, so that we're making progress on the goals that we've set ourselves, the vision that we've reflected on, which is new work and an ability to democratize opportunity to people outside of the typical employment sphere who get a preference in that space. And the last one is just marketing and communications. Tell better stories about what's happening in these marketplaces, what's happening on projects, at delivery, and the value that is being generated, and the experience that these people are having, both positive and negative, so that we just get into the narrative of the world that we live in, and that basically drives another layer of adoption and impact. So these are just a few. I think there's one more, if I'm not wrong.
No, I think that's it.
That's it. So take a look at these. If you're missing any work streams, let us know. But for now, we'll send out a note after this call so that you can self-select one of these work streams, and then I can then send out a plan as to how we recommend each of these work streams collaborate, and then from a governance perspective, when do we do readouts so that we are all working in sync.
Yeah, that's great, Balaji. Thanks. I mean, I'm sure everybody might have some other work streams that might be interesting. I was thinking about, Balaji, when you talked about we should probably have a work stream for membership and development, right? Like, I know we've talked a little bit about getting foundations involved and things like that. So it would be good to kind of figure out that is a possible one. So what we'll do, next steps on developing work streams would be to collaborate on a list. The link that I have here isn't quite correct, so we didn't update things as Balaji updated them. So we'll make sure we update these kind of working groups and the work streams for your guys' input, and then you can put your name down to if you're interested in participating in one of these specific work streams. So that's it. As far as kind of the presentation, I'm going to stop sharing. Actually, let's see if I can do that. Stop sharing. Yep. Any thoughts? I'd love to just open it up. We've got 15 minutes left, and would love to just get everybody's input. Like anything that stands out, anything that they find, I don't know, exciting, interesting, problematic, anything. Questions about the conference that we had last week, or the design sprint? Fire away.
I'll jump in because I don't really have anything to add. I just want to start out by expressing enthusiasm and gratitude and amazement at this entire process. It's just fantastic. And, I'm already reaching this point is a incredible experience of collaboration. In a sense, this group represents what's possible with open talent. We are operating outside of any sort of hierarchical or organizational model, and look at what this group is producing. It's amazing.
I totally agree with that. I second that. That's, it has been an amazing experience to think about that we all came together as the start of the pandemic, and we've gotten somewhere, and we're starting to really create some more momentum. So great point.
John, during the discussion, did you give some thought to the question, how would we know a year, 3 years from now if we're successful or not? What is the measures of success for the group and all the effort you're doing?
That's a great question, Jerry. We didn't spend as much time on that as we probably should have, but I think that's a really great provocation that we all need to think about. So, I'm definitely, I want to put my arms around that and think some more, but I would encourage everybody else to think about that as well. Like, what's the future state? What's the state? Where do we want to try to get to? So thanks for that, Jerry. Thanks for the good reminder that keep the end in mind.
You do sense that this is going to be the harder phase, right? The chats, the big ideas, us all kind of doing our thing for the last bit, that's been great. But this is the hard part, right? So I think everybody's got to be a little patient, a little bit, and I love the motivation, Sheila, that you just mentioned, because I think that's gotta carry us through this harder part, right? Because this is that's when it gets hard. And so I think there's a great passion, enthusiasm in this entire group, and just want to say, keep it going.
Thanks, Steve.
I have to agree, John. You know, as a design leader, it's the toughest thing to do is to write your concept statement, and that's what you've just written. And it's really beautiful. It's a very comprehensive beginning, but without that being documented and committed to, we can't see the realization of what you're going to, you're going to develop. So it's going to take a little while for me to process it. I need to read it and think about it, but I'll promise to do that for you this weekend, and hope everybody will also.
Yeah, thanks, Janice. I think that's a super important thing. And I was going to, and Steve, likewise, I think what's important here is that we, what I find is in these efforts, we kind of, any of these big kind of things, you get so excited and you have this kind of design phase, and it's amazingly empowered. And then you got to kind of get down and do some of the dirty work, right? And it gets really hard. And my recommendation is we just take it slow and let's just do a few things at a time and not try to tackle it so it overwhelms us. So that's my goal. Is I would rather do less than more right now, but make sure that we accomplish those things that we commit to. And then we can always do, I would rather make it more linear and vertical than horizontal right now, because I think that's what we'll get a lot more momentum out of it.
You know what, John, if I could just jump back in again, in life sciences, we actually have a proof point of this types of groups' potential and the ability to collaborate, outside of an organization, outside of a budget, outside of pretty any sort of structure at all, and still be extremely productive and high impact. It's something called the trial master file. And it's a situation in which organizations and individuals, maybe, 300 or 400, collaborated to create. It's essentially a voluntary standard that all drug sponsors at this point and the vendors that serve them in this particular area now adapt to. And no single organization created this. It was created by a group of people just like this. So if you want to look at the trial master file, it's actually a real thing. The reason I'm bringing this up is that the common wisdom in that group is that consistency beats intensity. So meaning that we really, and just let's all check our expectations. We're all a bunch of workaholics. We're all trying to get stuff done in light speed. That's a really important point, that it doesn't matter if really any of this gets done quickly, but consistently is way more powerful than trying to get it done in 3 months or whatnot. So I echo that. Let's all just sit back and take our time, because we're already on the pathway. What we just have to do is keep going. Slow and steady wins the race.
Great, that's good.
Jen, can I ask a question of Jen based on this conversation? Jen, from all the innovation work that you've done and seen, where these are people that don't really need to do this, but they're doing this because they want to do it. For them, like when I think about competing or collaborating with communities, for me, intensity is key. Otherwise, the world will just take me to wherever it wants me to go, right? There are other things that are always pushing and attracting and pulling us towards that. How do you think about, from an innovation and a disaggregated group collaboration, about how to maintain that consistency while ensuring that the intensity that comes with passion is supported?
Yeah, so again, the process of organizing is going to be key, right? That at times we'll need some decisions that are made, that are firm, that people can agree upon, and then at times there'll be more lax standards of how people collaborate and work through ideas, and then pivoting back to it. So this is particularly important to have that freedom, but then at the same time to have some drivers and markers where we say, well, this is kind of where we have to go with this, and then let's revisit this down the road if this hasn't worked well. This is in large cases how companies experiment as well, right? Where they try a few different things, but you can't try everything at one time, right? So I kind of want to, I think what you said a while back about, staying focused as much. In this experiment of this manifesto as well, it's the same thing, that you want to make sure that the things that you're exploring make sense, but at the same time that they're concrete. And I think that's going to be key. Otherwise, and we all have to sacrifice a bit. I don't think everyone's ideas are going to flesh out completely, but those that sort of percolate and have some merit, I think we can carry forth and see how they do.
Great, thanks for the input. Good question, Balaji.
Thanks, Balaji.
Anybody else?
I think that just in terms of, I might offer up one thought in terms of what is it going to be like when it's really successful in 2 or 3 years, and how will we know? And maybe we look at that, not so much the specifics of what it is, but actually more about what it feels like when it's successful. Right? Because I've already been hearing a number of things, like one thing is that it's going to actually feel like a thing. Another thing that we might notice is that it feels like we're constantly growing and we're constantly adding to the pool of knowledge on how this is working. And then another thing that I picked up was that, which was from an earlier conversation, which really inspired me, which is that this is really part of a learning organization, and that we are a learning organization, and that we're bringing in new pieces of data, and that's really part of the ecosystem. And these are going to be things that we can actually have a felt sense that this is successful, rather than saying, oh, this is the ROI of this per se, sitting at this moment.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Ray. I feel like, right now there's a lot of anxiety around work, and there's a lot of, caused by the friction in the systems that we can't quite get there. And I think how it feels is something we need to kind of figure out how we measure and how we express. So what are some ideal states in the future?
Well, yeah, particularly when we're looking at what this is nothing less than a transformational change effort, right? And the idea about transformational change is you don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be. And so all you can really do is lean on how it's going to feel, rather than the specifics. A transitional change, maybe you can do more specifics. I'm going to go from A to B, but this is like I'm going from A to, I'm not quite sure what, but I kind of have this sense about what's it's going to be. So,
yeah, great input. Thanks, Ray. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I also want to be respectful and sensitive to a lot of startups on the call, where they don't have the luxury of feeling that this is working or not. They need to see some clients that are coming in, that are being sold based on what they're learning, based on what we are creating. I think there needs to be a little, of course, I totally agree with you that I think the endpoint could be unclear, but I think the energy can only be sustained if there's utility that people are seeing.
For sure. I think there's a way to mash both those together, right? It's like, as a serial entrepreneur, there's always a high level of anxiety when you start something, right? And I think one of the metrics to me is how do we reduce anxiety for those entrepreneurs on the call and startups on the call? One of the ways to reduce anxiety is to, increase the flow of business, right? Increase the tangible flows, so that anxiety, that feeling is like, yeah, I'm moving forward. I'm not stuck. I'm not kind of like, I'm getting calls back. I'm, engaging in more conversations. I've actually sold some deals. And so I think those both are really, really good points. So anything else? Any other words of wisdom going forward for us to contemplate? We've got a few minutes left.
John, will you be sending the slides, or can we get our hands on the slides?
Yeah, we'll share the slides. What I'm going to share is I'm going to share the slides. I'll share a Google Doc with the manifesto. We'll also have kind of some voting mechanism for the principles. And then we'll have another document that will have all the work streams to either add to the work streams, and then also put your name in as somebody who wants to be specifically involved in any of the work streams. Anything else that I should get for you guys?
John, has there been any ideation of beta testing of how you take this first manifesto and begin to test it?
No, there hasn't. I'd love some help thinking of that. So anybody who wants to volunteer to do that, that would be really helpful. I mean, as far as I've gotten is just to test it, to get it in the smaller group, to test it with this group, obviously to get your feedback, get it out to the copywriter one more time to make sure that they can kind of wordsmith it, and then we should think through how we test it for sure. Great point, Janice. Thanks.
And on that, what about the personas we want to test it with?
Yeah, great. I mean,
right? Like what are the top 3 personas? Because we know gig economy and understanding of that, you know, everyone has different levels of maturity in their understanding, and some we need to educate, and some we know that they're already on the bus, they just don't know how to actually implement.
Yeah,
so that could be good to think through as well. Tom O'Malley, I don't know if you're on the call, but perhaps Current could help with that. Building the virtual advisory board. I just volunteered you.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, testing this with different personas in the market, absolutely.
Well, one more thought along this line is who is the audience that we're addressing? So I think it will be useful to try to identify target audiences, whether it's the supply group, the demand group, public policy makers. And I don't know actually who are all the people involved here, other than the people I see on the screen. So it might be helpful if you can send us the list of the people involved in affiliations, and then we can see who else we have to add to try to validate or at least get feedback about the manifesto and the idea we're trying to present here.
Yeah, that's great. Great input by everybody. So I'm definitely gonna call on the 4 of you guys, Janice, Mary, Jerry, and Tom, and we'll come up with a solution on that. So thanks so much for volunteering to be on that committee.
John, one other thing, just kind of in the spirit of focus, I put it in the comments, but perhaps we could spend some time establishing OKRs, so what the objectives and key results are, and kind of breaking those out quarterly so everyone can kind of parallel path against a clear set of principles, and we're, you know, taking a structured approach, not losing any. So I don't know how much that fits into the governance, but I see that as the real tactical next step. So we know what we're marching towards.
Well, I think there's 2 things, right? Probably in the working group for either the manifesto or the governance. So look at that and make that comment for sure. And I think that's really great. All right, guys. Well, we're at 11 o'clock or Mountain Time. So man, I love this group. So much fun to see you guys. Have a great weekend. Give me a shout if you need anything. I'll get some docs out to you this afternoon, and we'll be off and running.
See you later.
Thanks.
Awesome, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Ciao. Bye-bye.